back to the All Out Brits podcast, the podcast that brings you everything you'd expect from a podcast, but from across the seas here, talking about the NFL in sunny, I lie sunny, it's pretty cold now in miserable old England. But the one thing that hasn't been miserable, has not been cold, it's been fiery, is the NFL. This week in week 10, we saw Jared Goff throw 5 interceptions, which was only one less than points that the Cowboys managed to put on the board in the very, very end, which isn't too great, but I'm sure we'll touch on that. We also saw Allied forces blitz Germany for the first time since the 1940s, this time in the form of the Carolina Panthers taking on the New York Giants. And Bryce Young is happy again because he's got another win. But as always, there's plenty of things to talk about, and we know that it was a very, very good week. And as always, to join me to talk about everything is the main man, Mr. Greenwood. Mr. Greenwood, how was this week for you, and how much did you enjoy it?
Again, that Germany game really did kickstart off what was a really intriguing week in the league, like you mentioned. Obviously, Bryce Young being chuffed and being happy is fantastic. But in the cold, miserable old Manchester weather, we can always sit inside and be warmed by what's on NFL Red Zone. What Scott Hansen produces for us is always absolutely heat, and that always keeps our appetite going. I think there's a few massive games, Taryn, that we are going to obviously touch on. But which game stood out for you, and which game do you want to get started with?
I think there's one big talking point this week, and I think we should probably go into that, and that's the Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs somehow, some way keep on winning, and that did not change this week, even with Bo Nix having the game of his absolute life. Somehow, Kansas come away with a win, even though it looks like everything was done and dusted. I thought Sean Payton had pulled off a masterclass somehow, and what game was pretty much dead, really. Both teams really struggled. Defense held up pretty well. Somehow, though, this Chiefs team keeps coming away with a win. But how did they do it, Mr. Greenwood, to start with?
It's some fucking black voodoo magic shit, mate. It can't be anything else. Obviously, the kicker for the Denver Broncos, Will Lutz, missing 2 field goals on the day. People forget that he missed the 60-yarder, all right, to kind of end the first half. And obviously, it's very, very difficult stadium to kick the ball in his Arrowhead, outside under the elements. But you're paid to kick the ball through the sticks, so you got to kick the ball through the sticks, especially in a game like this where you've got to take points on the board when you can get them. You mentioned Bo Nix, mate. He is such a Sean Payton quarterback. He looks very, very good. I quite like the Denver Broncos, and sneakily again, another team that's again gone under the radar a little bit. And Sean Payton has got that defense playing absolutely fantastically. In terms of the cornerbacks, for me, Pat Surtain is one of the best in the league. He was on lockdown all game. Patrick Mahomes was very, very limited and ultimately looked like the second best quarterback on the field. But when push comes to shove, you know what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen. Taylor Swift is in the stadium. She's going to pull off some voodoo magic shit. The Chiefs roll on, and they roll on to 9-0, I believe it now, Taryn. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. What do you make of that? How do you stop the Chiefs? Have you got to do some like voodoo magic shit against them, or have you just got to play better? What do you think?
I mean, you would have thought against most teams to have a field goal to win it with inside 50 yards. It pretty much nailed, done and dusted. But somehow this Chief team, all elements on the ball, they are just on fire this season. I think for the Broncos, you can't really do much else wrong. Maybe, like you said, Lutz makes that goal. It makes it a very, very different game. Defensively, they were so good, wrapped up most of that receiving core for the Chiefs. Travis Kelce did get pretty involved this week, but the story was Kareem Hunt. I mean, he had so many yards on the ground and then so many yards receiving as well. I think he saved that Chiefs offense because everyone else was really, really struggling. But I've been seeing everywhere this week, every single receiver, team, player in the NFL says one thing and one thing only, is that it doesn't matter who is in the slots, doesn't matter who is running the go routes, who's running the streaks. If you have number 15, number 15 in that backfield, doesn't matter. He will throw to anyone. He'll throw to a fat lady. He'll throw to a minor. He'll throw to anybody. He will get the ball in their hands. And that's what we keep seeing this season. Overall, though, I mean, we're at a point now where this team is looking seriously scary. Every time we say there's going to be, they'll get beat by them, they'll get beat by these. But is somebody going to beat this Chiefs team this season?
Absolutely, mate, and they will, and I don't think we're going to be waiting very, 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 very long for it, because there's a team that are coming for them next week. A team in form, a team with a quarterback who's outperforming most of the other quarterbacks in the league. That I'm sure we'll touch on in our preview podcast. So no spoilers there. But I think for me, you mentioned that the Chiefs looking scary. I don't think they are. I think the offense is looking really, really tame. The defense is looking really good, and the defense is what's pulling them through. And obviously, offense can win games, defense can win championships.
Mhm.
But the defense is winning both, like pretty much every single game. The defense is just showing up and clutching out. And Patrick Mahomes doesn't really need to do anything special on the field. I think this week though, coming up against a better quarterback, a better team, a pretty all-rounded team as well. In a situation that looks quite similar, no massive receivers, kind of no one screaming or shouting out. I think the Chiefs will get found out sooner rather than later, mate.
And it'd be very interesting. I think we do need to give Mahomes his flowers. I mean, to have got the
No, we
team to the
don't.
point.
No, we don't.
Yes,
He's
we
had
do.
enough.
We
He's had
do, mate.
enough of it. No, we don't. All right. He has played crap this season. He's been nowhere near Lamar Jackson. You've been nowhere near Joe Burrow. Nowhere near Josh Allen. Those three quarterbacks, especially Joe Burrow, who sat there with pretty much a losing record, who is performing week in, week out at the highest possible level. He needs a defense. He needs just someone to rush the quarterback. He needs a corner. And obviously, Mahomes has got it all. He's got Chris Jones on the defensive line. He's got Trent McDuffie in the secondary. What more does that Kansas City Chiefs team need? It doesn't need more flowers. It doesn't need more praise, let me tell you, mate.
Fine, I'll take him off. I'll save him for somebody else. And you know what? Fine then. I'll give him to somebody else. I'm going to go and give him to Derek Carr then. Derek Carr. Somehow, this Saints team started off 2-0. We thought they were going to be marching. We thought this was a Super Bowl year for New Orleans. And they've lost seven in a row. And somehow they come up against divisional rivals Atlanta Falcons and come away with, some would say, a smash and grab. But Derek Carr, no interceptions, 2 touchdowns, launched that bad boy over the top twice to his only receiver, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, whatever his fella's name is. And I tell you what, the Saints, how many more people do you need to take out of that system? And somehow they still keep picking up results when they need to.
Yeah, a little bit of a weird game, wasn't it? Let's be honest,
Yeah,
mate. A little bit of a weird one. But if you look at the first 2 weeks of the season, when the New Orleans Saints looked unbelievable, when they were putting 40 points on each team, kind of that were playing, what was good about them? How did they do that? It was explosive plays. It was big time plays. It was getting the ball downfield. They're not a team that needs to grind out the yards. They're not a team. Obviously, they've got Alvin Kamara in the backfield, but he as well. He was a result of a lot of explosive plays. They're not a team that want to go kind of 1st and 10, then 2nd and 7, then 3rd and 3. They want to get the yards and they want to get them very, very quickly. And that's what Derek Carr did this week. Obviously, you mentioned MVS over the top. Only 3 catches on the day for him, but for 109 yards, and 2 of them being deep, deep plays. And just look absolutely sensational. When he's throwing the ball deep, Derek Carr looks like a bit of a quarterback, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But when he's throwing kind of behind the sticks, he looks very, very, very subpar. I think the story of the day, though, was that the Atlanta Falcons should have won that game of football. There's without a shadow of a doubt in my mind, they should have won that game. And why should they have won it? Well, they missed 3 field goals. That's 9 points that they left off the board. And they've got a fantastic kicker, one of the best in the league in Young Ho Koo. Was it Young Wei Koo? That's it. Pronouncing it right. Young Wei Koo. Obviously missing 3 out of 4. That is unacceptable. That is inexcusable. There is no excuses for that at all. And I think he looked pretty gutted on the sideline as well, didn't he, Tara? Knowing that he's cost his team to fall.
100%. And I think we saw this week, across the NFL, there was so many teams whose kickers really put them into some garbage situations, say the very least. And I think that just shows that how important 3 points can be. It might be one missed kick, but it adds up in the end. It makes games so much closer than they need to be, especially when, you've had long drives and you kept the ball in your hands. You want to have something to show for it. And in the long run, it does add up. And like you said, Young Wei Koo, he was absolutely gutted. I'm not surprised, because to lose by 3 points and you've missed pretty much 9, absolutely humbling. But this Falcons team, we've said they looked half decent at the start of the season, kind of struggling now. Kirk Cousins, he keeps having these up and down games. Where do they head as sort of a franchise? We thought they were going to be a quick fix and they were going to be challenging, but they just seem to be, left by the wayside a little bit.
A little bit, yeah, to be honest with you, mate. But I think what people forget is that they did draft a rookie quarterback as well. They still
Yeah.
have a project ongoing with Penix Jr., so it shouldn't be panic stations at all for the Atlanta Falcons. Bijan Robinson as well, the rookie from a couple of seasons ago,
Mhm.
sensational. He has absolutely turned around his season. He
Yeah.
has doubled his fantasy points in the last 6 weeks than what he got in the first 6 weeks. He looks absolutely filthy. And again, 120 yards for him, but they need to get him involved more in the passing game. And we've
Yeah.
said this a million more times. They need to get Kyle Pitts more involved in the passing game. Darnell Mooney needs to kind of look going a little bit deeper, not just at the shallow routes. But just whilst you mentioned about the kickers, mate, and about kickers missing field goals, I thought we'd mention about the team. We didn't script this. I just thought I'd throw it in there about the team that you've got on your hat. How hard is it for people to criticise kickers? It's quite hard, but not for one man, not for Deebo Samuel. He's out here grabbing teammates' throats.
Yeah.
He's out there kind of pulling chains. He's out there cussing out your kicker. All right, let's touch on this one. Obviously, the San Francisco 49ers getting the job done with a walk-off field goal. You must love your kicker, Taron. But wait, what went on in San Francisco?
I give it up on this kid. He don't even make me moody. He makes me fucking angry. I can't be dealing with him. He's actually ridiculous. I think what makes it worse is we had Robbie Gould a few seasons back. That man didn't miss. I actually don't think I watched the 49ers game where that man missed. If he did miss, I probably wasn't watching the game. But every single week, this kid, and everyone talks about, oh, he hit a 60-yard field goal. It's the longest Super Bowl history. He was playing for his career. He was on his way out last season. And he's come back. He did his cruise shit. He's somehow come back. Do you know what makes it even worse? We had two kickers that came in, and they both have better records than that boy. Two kickers better than him. I could not believe how close that game was. And I genuinely think I would have, there would have been some horrid words spread on social media about that boy. I think Kyle Shanahan has probably had enough of him as well. You can't leave 9 points off the board against a team like Tampa. We were very, very lucky considering how good, Brock Purdy was. 350 yards, 2 touchdowns, unbelievable from him. But when you got a kicker and you got a muppet who can't put it through the sticks, no wonder Deebo was fighting. And the thing that made me laugh, he weren't fighting the kicker. No, he went for the snapper.
The long snapper.
It's not his fault. Slap that knobhead there. You know what I mean? It just sums up San Francisco's season this year. Nothing's going right. It's just either one element's going right or everything else is falling apart. The one part that killed me was Tampa getting pinned back, 3 and out. And I thought, oh, yeah, we'll get the ball back. And our specials team decides to forget how punts work and manage to give the ball back within the 20. Our season, our special teams, our defense is all over the gaff. Somehow came away with a win, but I give up at this point.
Mate, your specials team has looked all different kinds of special, hasn't it? Let's be honest.
I know, mate. I don't know where they pick these kids up from because they are not learning how to play this game properly whatsoever.
They're not. And one thing I will say as well is Baker Mayfield on 4th and 7. How does he just stiff arm Nick Bosa for about 20 minutes? His powers
Bosa's got preferential treatment, but that is ridiculous.
Powers don't work on people that vote for Donald Trump. It's weird, isn't it? They don't work on the white quarterback. All right, it's honestly Baker Mayfield on that drive there was incredible. Completing that pass to Bucky Irving, I was screaming at my television box. Mate. It was incredible, but again, not enough to get the job done. And another team that did a lot but didn't do enough to get the job done, obviously, was the Houston Texans, turning Jared Goff over 5 times. All right, that is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Getting the ball off one of the best quarterbacks in the league 5 times, which is the worst he's ever strung in his career. That's more interceptions than he's thrown all season, and still not getting the job done. What works so well for the Detroit Lions, and how come the Houston Texans decided not to win that football game?
I can't believe it, to be honest with you. I fell asleep at halftime because 3 o'clock in the morning, I was dying at that point. But we have said that there's one thing that sets apart the Lions from any other team in this league, and it's Dan Campbell. He had a Rafa Benitez-esque halftime team talk. He must have gave Jibril Cisse a good chat in there and said, oi, knobhead, get back out there and sort it out. And I tell you what, somehow, some way, they came back because to be down that bad, especially against his Texan team and that Texans D, coordinated so well. D'Amico Ryans must be absolutely fuming to have had, the Lions in that position. But 5 turnovers is ridiculous. He had a shaky start this season. He's been pretty much impeccable as Jared Goff up until this point, but it's unexcusable. Some of them were just forcing the ball into places you don't need to. That is the first time I've ever seen the Lions team, play like that, where you're just trying to throw the ball into hands of people that just aren't there or aren't ready for it. And they were very, very lucky in the end, to say the very least. I think the Texans, few wrong decisions along the way, but overall, I mean, you just got to hold your hands up and say, fair enough. That kick at the end, Jesse Bates, wow. Did you see the video of the Detroit sort of passengers flying out of Detroit? Yeah. How cool is that? How unbelievable is that? I tell you what, my illegal, dodgy stream would definitely have cut out at that point. And I think I definitely would have been in tears not knowing how that ended. But Lions, for yourself, mate, what can you say about them at this point?
Well, I think I can say that you're very, very much jealous of the kicker. But when the Lions needed the defense to stand up, the offense has dragged them out of some holes this season. Okay, but the defense absolutely dragged them out of a cave this time. There's no question of a doubt. There's no shadow of a doubt in my mind about that, mate. But they did very, very well. And I think when you look at, like you mentioned with Dan Campbell, they've been knocked down there 5 times, but we know the famous Dan Campbell speech. We may get knocked down, but on the way back up, we're taking a kneecap, and then we're going to take an eyeball, and then we're going to take a leg. And that's what they did each time. They just kept grinding away and grinding away and grinding away on CJ Stroud, and they pressured him so much. 22 total pressures and 4 sacks on the sophomore quarterback. And we mentioned, I think, obviously at the start of the season, how we hoped for, or we didn't hope for, I should say, a sophomore slump. Yeah. What an absolute sensational season he had last year. But the last kind of, probably we're looking at now 6 weeks, he's been quite a poor quarterback. He hasn't looked like the CJ Stroud of old, the CJ Stroud that we all fell in love with. He's fallen back into the trend of a Dak Prescott, Taron. He has. And you look at Dak Prescott's rise into the league, he got Offensive Rookie of the Year. He looked equally as impressive as CJ Stroud did, but in his second season, he had a little bit of a slump. And I think that's what we're seeing from CJ Stroud this year.
100%. And I think they've probably invested in areas that haven't really helped him too much. I think, obviously, offensively to add Stephon Diggs in was unbelievable call. I think it served him so well until he obviously went down. I think it's been tough on him to lose Nico Collins and then Stephon Diggs. But that O-line has really, really struggled this season. If you can't protect your quarterback, especially one that is such an elite pocket passer, it's just not going to end well whatsoever. And again, he fell victim in the end of forcing passes, and especially in the red zone and places like that, you can't afford turnovers. We saw with the Vikings this weekend that Sam Darnold, I don't know, he must have had like an Acheron or something, because he was just throwing balls to people and looked like he did not want to win that game whatsoever. And I think we saw a bit of that in Mr. CJ Stroud. Hopefully going forward, it is just a blip. Because that, as we know how good he can be and how good this Texans team can be. They still have had a pretty decent season, but I thought they were going to be absolutely dominant. And so for them to not be as dominant as they could have been, it's a bit disappointing at the very least, isn't it?
It is, mate. But I think they'll be right back on track next week, because they have an easy game next week against one of the worst defenses in the league. They're playing the Dallas Cowboys. So with CJ Stroud, he can have himself a little rest this week. He doesn't have to train every day. He doesn't have to study the tape every day, because he's playing one of the worst defenses in the league. I hope at least that he'll get back on track, because when he throws that rock, he looks filthy when he does it right. But again, like you mentioned, losing wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, it ain't going to help you out no matter what. And again, in the trenches, that's where they lost this football game. You mentioned on the offensive side of the field, really not being able to protect the quarterback. But even on the defensive line, missing Will Anderson Jr. and then only getting a handful of pressures, only 11 pressures on the quarterback, and they didn't sack Jared Goff at all. Yeah. He was kept clean. That is an elite kind of pass defense almost that they've got in terms of the offensive line for the Detroit Lions. On the flip side of that, Houston just don't have that. That's where they need to look at investing in the draft. It's on the offense and the defensive side of the ball.
100%. And I think another team, which you kind of mentioned, that probably have invested a bit poorly this season. I'm going to have to play it.
Yeah! Here we go!
Here we go to the orthopedic surgery.
Let's go into the Dallas Cowboys. I've heard everything this season. I've heard, oh, we couldn't win because we had no targets. Oh, we couldn't win because we didn't have this. We hadn't heard that. This is the first time I've ever heard I couldn't see the ball because the stadium hasn't got blinds. Jerry Jones, stick some blinds into your $1 billion stadium. Dallas, I tell you what, I have not seen a ginger man fumble that bad since in Ron Weasley, mate. What on earth was that performance against the Eagles?
Well, I stayed up to watch the first half of that game. All right,
I could manage.
I was up at 6 o'clock the next day. Right? I managed to. I was knackered. All right, on Monday. I have only just recovered from it, mate. I have shattered, and I wasted my time on that.
Yeah.
All right. At one point, we could have gone ahead. We could have got a lead, but then Zeke Elliott in the first half decides to throw the ball to the ops on the opposition 5-yard line in the red zone. We have been so bad in the red zone this season; it's been terrible. 6 points. Our kicker was perfect on the day. Let me tell you. When we eventually bloody got down the field, Cooper Rush put together a couple of lovely drives in the first half, and I think defensively as well. Fantastic in the first half,
100%.
kind of restricting Jalen Hurts and all the kind of weapons that the Philadelphia Eagles have got, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and that fantastic offensive line. Micah Parsons came back and had the impact that we all hoped and prayed that he would.
Yeah.
He was restricting kind of Jalen Hurts in the pocket. He was getting around. He was athletic. He was superb. Along with that, we had Demarion Overshawn, who's basically rookie this season. He was our 3rd-round pick from last year. He was absolutely fantastic in the first half. And then the second half came around. I went to bed and I woke up and they've just put 20 points on us time. They've put 36 points on us in total in that game, mate. That second half was appalling, without a shadow of a doubt. The defense just imploded. But why is the defense imploding? Because the offense is creating nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. 2 times in that game, there was 2 open touchdowns, both to CeeDee Lamb. But because of the stadium, because of a poor thrown football, nothing's getting done. It's obviously Dak Prescott now going for surgery. He'll be back for 25. I think we just tank and try and get like a really good draft pick. There's no quarterbacks in this draft either, which is fine because I do believe in Dak. So let's try and invest in maybe get a interior defensive lineman that can stop the run. Maybe get a linebacker that can stop the run. Maybe get someone that can stop the goddamn fucking run, Taron, or protect the goddamn quarterback because it ain't a good year to be a Dallas Cowboy.
But on the flip side and the plus side, you get to have Trey Lance as
I
quarterback.
actually want to see how he does. All right, I've got faith in Trey. All right, faith in Trey. I really want to see how he does because in preseason he looked all right. All right, he didn't look shocking. He wasn't fantastic. Don't get me wrong. He ain't Cooper Rush. All right, he ain't Cooper Rush, but he's still a very, very young man. He's a young quarterback, and if he can develop under Cooper Rush, under Dak Prescott on the sideline, and just learn a little bit, maybe, just maybe, there's a career in the XFL waiting for him.
You've heard it here, folks. The 1st-round pick, the 3 first-round picks for that Muppet, just for him to have a career in the XFL. Lord above, Trey Lance. You still haunt me. You really do still haunt me. I think the last thing worth mentioning about Week 10 of the NFL was the Germany game. And it was probably, it started and looked awful, to be honest with you, but it turned out to be a half-decent game. But it could be the end of an era for Mr. Daniel Jones by the sounds of it and by the looks of it. He could quite possibly be just the most poor quarterback I think I've quite possibly seen. He's just poor. I mean, to have spent all that money on him just to hand it off to a rookie.
He ain't that poor if you got 40 million a year, mate. He ain't that poor.
To hand it off to a rookie and him to do all your hard work, Lord above, and then to get schooled by a lad that can't even see over his O-line. Wow. Germany, you got an absolute treat, and I hope you bloody enjoyed it. I really do. What did you make of that game, mate?
I think the NFL, as much as it wants to go global, as much as it wants to go international, at the same time it doesn't. Sending the Carolina Panthers and the New York Giants over to Germany is one of the most horrific war crimes that we've seen since World War II, mate. It was absolutely... who orchestrated that game, I do not know. But Bryce Young in that 4th quarter looked really good. Yeah. And I quite like how he's developed this season. Obviously, sitting for a few weeks under Andy Dalton, he's learned a little bit of how to play the game of football. Something's clicked in his head, okay? Something's just snapped. And I think he's going to show us why he was the first overall pick. On the flip side of that, mate, Daniel Jones, he's ass. He is absolute hot garbage. So many times, Malik Neighbors, he's incredible. He's so good. He's getting 10, 20 yards of separation sometimes. He's so good at wide receiver, and he just needs a half decent quarterback to get him the ball, because those are throws that I'd expect me and you to make, Taron. If we were playing in the back garden and you were getting that wide open and I wasn't making the throw, I think you'd be asking for a new quarterback as well, mate. Yeah. But yeah, I think Brian Daboll's absolutely had enough. There is no chance that Daniel Jones plays another snap as quarterback for the New York Giants. And I predicted this at the start of the season. I did say it. I said that these are going to be the worst team. You said it was going to be the Patriots. I said it was going to be the Giants. And you also said that CJ Stroud was going to be MVP. So we both made some kind of ropey decision at the start of the season, but mine are a little bit less ropey than yours, mate.
Well, we'll have to see how Drew Lock gets on in week 11 of the NFL and whether or not New York goes into meltdown with both teams being absolutely arse at the moment. Overall, week 10, a wonderful week. A little bit of chaos, to say the very, very least, but overall, very enjoyable. Mr. Greenwood, any final words on the chaos and enjoyabilities of week 10?
Obviously, this week in the NFL, it was the salute to service week. So, Taron, your service is very much saluted, my good friend. What a week. What a podcast. What a man. Thank you very much, sir.
Very much appreciated. And America's team couldn't deliver for America on the day, but we'll have to let them slide for this season. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Please make sure to like, follow, and subscribe. Keep your eyes out for our fantasy video and our preview for week 11. And make sure to comment your thoughts on whether or not you actually listened past the 10-minute mark. As always, we thank you, and we shall see you next time on the All Out Brits podcast.
Peace.
Lovely.
That was a really good podcast.
Perfect.